Hi, welcome back. So in this video, I thought I would talk about basically what your finished case should look like after you're done writing it. So thinking what the format should be, how it should be laid out, just generally what it's supposed to look like. And you'll see what I mean as I go on in this video. I have a very similar video to this in chapter 3 of my course. This one right here, format of an LD case, kind of talks about a very similar thing, but I was looking back through my channel, noticed that this video is only 2 minutes and 29 seconds long. For some reason, I didn't write anything on the board, and this is the first video that I have in my writing the case chapter, and it's at the very beginning, and then you actually go through writing the case. But I thought it'd be good to have another chapter once you're finished writing the case, just to make sure that everything that you've done looks correct. So you can think of this almost as like a recap of all these other videos, just summarizing them, sort of like a conclusion, reminding you of what your case should look like at this point after you're done writing it. So I'm going to be typing here and basically making a list of almost like a rubric that you can check off to make sure that you have everything you need in your case and that it's laid out correctly. So the first thing, obviously, that you'll want in your case is you'll want an introduction. And the introduction can be a variety of things. I tend to go with either an analogy or a quote. So either an analogy, something that's you take the main idea of your case and you make some sort of analogy to kind of lead into that idea, or you have a quote from some sort of famous person that's basically summarizing the main idea in your case. And I think I've mentioned this before, but I really love the website brainyquote.com. It's great for finding quotes for anything you need. You just type something in the search bar and it'll spit something out, and it usually works pretty well. So you want to have one of those in your introduction. After that, you will... How do I should have looked up how to do this before. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. After that, you'll talk about the resolution. I stand resolved, blah, 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 blah. Whatever the resolution is, you want to state the resolution. And I'm kind of just making a list out here right now, and I know this might be kind of hard to follow, but I'll show you an example when we're all done with this. I want to just lay all this out first. But you have your introduction, you state the resolution, you give your definitions. What do you need to define? You need to define... I cannot spell. All right, you need to define both sides of the resolution and any other keywords in the resolution. You're also going to define like your value and criterion, but we're going to do that a little later. So speaking of that, after you give your definitions, you'll usually have your value. So you'll want to state your value, obviously. You'll want to define your value. You want to give a definition of your value. And then you'll usually want to have some kind of reason to prefer, basically stating why is this value the highest in the round? Why should it be the value that we use in this resolution? I apologize if you can hear my keyboard typing. I was not thinking, and I put my microphone right on my desk next to my keyboard because I was not prepared to make this video. So, but yeah, you'll want to just talk about a reason to prefer and just kind of talk about your value. And again, I'll show an example of this later, but I just want to get all this written down first. Optionally, if you have a criterion, you'll state your criterion, and you'll basically do the same steps as in your value. So if you have a criterion, you'll state your criterion, you'll define it, you'll explain how the criterion links to the value. And then you'll go into your contentions. And basically you'll have 2 or 3 main contentions, but you'll want to have one contention talking about why your side of the resolution leads to your value. And why your opponent's side does not. Because again, these are contentions. These are your main arguments. and these two should be your main arguments. The whole idea behind LD is you have this value, this highest value. It's the highest value in the round. You should win because your side leads to that highest value. Your opponent's side doesn't lead to this value, so he should lose. That's the basic idea behind LD. So no matter what these two contentions, these are essential. These need to be in every single case that you write. They are not optional. They're not skippable. These need to be in there. You can also, oftentimes, people will have a value, not a value, a contention about your value, why it is the highest in the round. This may or may not be needed. So you can either, when you're talking about your value and you're giving a reason to prefer your value, a reason why your value is the highest value in the round, you can either talk about why your value is important here, right after you introduce your value, before you go into the criterion and the contentions, or you can have a whole contention dedicated to it, to talking about why the value is the highest value and all that. Or you can have both. That's really up to you. But yeah, these two though are very important to have in your case. So, and then inside your contentions, I'll just make this a separate bullet point. You'll want to have examples. And if you remember what we talked about when we're writing a contention, you'll want to kind of format this in a claim, warrant, impact kind of way. You want to have a claim in your contentions. You want to have a warrant. The warrant is the example. And you'll want to have an impact. So again, if you don't remember what this means, basically your example is the main meat of your case, but you can't just explain the example. You have to introduce the example first. You need to explain what the example is going to illustrate. Then you give the example, and then you explain again what the example showed. So claim, state your basic argument / what the example will show. In your warrant, you present the example, and in your impact, you explain what you just proved with the example, or explain what the example proved. Explain how the example proved your point, I guess. So another way to think about this is, you may have heard this before, this is a common saying, but when you're explaining something, first you say what you're going to say, then say it, then say what you just said. So what do I mean by that? This again goes back to claim, warrant, impact. Your claim is you say what you're going to say. I'll show an example of that later. Then you say it with your example, you present your example, and then in the impact, you say what you just said. So I know that may sound a little confusing, so actually I think at this point, I'll just add one more thing here, which is your conclusion, and that's basically just what it sounds like. You're bringing everything back together, you're concluding your whole case, you're kind of summarizing your case in a few sentences. All right, so I know I've just kind of been talking and just writing this stuff, and it's kind of hard to keep track of it. So let's actually look at an example. I'm actually going to show you an example neg case that I wrote. And these example cases, by the way, I think I mentioned this somewhere on the channel. I don't remember. But I have a companion website here for those of you who are just watching on YouTube. If you go to this URL, which I'll have down in the description of this video, it'll take you to this website that I have here that has a bunch of cool resources that go along with these YouTube videos. So if you scroll down past all this stuff to course materials, you'll find links to the YouTube videos. Some of them have little handouts and worksheets that you can refer to as you're watching, things like that. And in the writing the case section at the bottom, I have a bunch of sample cases that are actually uploaded here that you can just look at and refer to and kind of base your cases off of and make sure you're on the right track. So I'm going to sort of just look at a sample neg case right now. So actually, let's do this. Can I do this? I should have prepared this before. I apologize. Okay, that'll work, right? Yeah, that'll work. Okay, So just really quickly, and I'm not going to go through this example case in too much detail right now because it's hard to keep track of in the video. But again, you can go to the website and you can look at it on your own there. But I just want to just illustrate what I've been saying. So what should your finished case look like? You should have an introduction that has either an analogy or a quote. What do I have here? I have a quote from Ron Paul. The resolution, by this way, was nationalism ought to be valued above globalism. For this case, I'm on the negative side, so I'm valuing globalism. So I just wrote the resolution at the top as globalism ought to be valued above nationalism. That's just something that I did for my cases to keep track of which one was the AF case and which one was the neg case and make sure I didn't get confused, but you don't have to do that. But anyway, so I have the introduction or the hook, I guess I call it, because you kind of hook your audience in here. But I have a little quote here, and then I say, it is because I agree with Ron Paul that I stand resolved. So then I state the resolution. So those are these two things here. I go into definitions of both sides of the resolution, nationalism and globalism. In those cases, I think those are the only two words that need to be defined. And then I go into my value here. So I state my value. My value is human rights. I define my value. My value is defined as the rights to life, liberty, and property. And I give a reason to prefer, and I talk about my value and why it's important. So I say human rights are universally recognized. All other values eventually point back to human rights. So human rights is the highest value in this debate. It's the highest in the round, which again is a very important argument that you need to hit. So I'm actually going to bold this because where did my bold button go? Oh no. Okay, there it is. Man. All right. So yeah, I'm bolding this because this is important. Just like these other two bold things, contentions here are important. All of these three arguments in bold here, those are essential in your case. You cannot forget those in your case. If all you get from this video is you need these three bold underlined items in your case, that's all I really want you to take away. That's important. But anyway, so I have a reason to prefer here. Human rights are given to every individual. We need to people we need human rights. I'm establishing it as the highest in the round, so that's my value section. I don't have a criterion section in this case, and then I go right into my contentions. So again, like I just said, these are the two main contentions that you need. Why your side of the resolution leads to your value, why your opponent's side does not. And so that's what I have here. I have, and I've worded it a little bit differently, but I actually have as my contention one that my opponent's side doesn't lead to human rights. My opponent's side violates human rights. So that's this here. Your opponent's side does not lead to your value. Under my second contention, I have globalism, which is my side. Globalism respects human rights, and so that's the why your side of the resolution leads to your value aspect. So I have these two contentions in here. In this case, they're in the opposite order than I have them here, which is kind of confusing. But yeah, and so inside the contentions, let's see if I'm following this here. So let's just look at contention 2. So I need a claim, I need a warrant, and an impact. So you'll see here I actually have that kind of in their own paragraphs. This first paragraph is kind of the claim. So my argument is that globalism respects human rights. So I talk about how I kind of explain that just with words. I'm not getting into the example yet. I'm just talking about how logically that makes sense here. And then I go into the warrant for the claim to prove the claim. I talk about the Biological Weapons Convention here. That's my warrant. That's my main example. And I think it's always important to have a real world example in your case if you can, just because that makes your argument so much clearer to the judge. They can understand what you're talking about much more understandably if you have an example to back that up. So I have this example of the Biological Weapons Convention, how globalism created this convention and protected a lot of human rights. So now I've had the claim and the warrant, and then the impact, again, I explain how the example proved my claim. I kind of talk about how, actually, I guess I could have more of an impact here, but I should be saying how, oh, this example shows what I said in the first paragraph in my claim, that globalism, we saw in this example, globalism protected human rights, and that's why you should vote for me. And then here I have a little conclusion, and I talk about how, sum up what I just said in a single sentence, and then I say thank you, and I stand ready for cross-examination, which is just a cool thing to say. So yeah, again, in the contention, you say what you're going to say, which I kind of do in the first paragraph. Then you say it with your example, and then you say what you just said, and that's generally a good format to follow. So I know this is kind of hard to follow in a video format, but again, I have this sample case written out here. on my website. It's one of these sample cases, sample neg cases, so you can go and look at that again if you need to. But I will expand this out here so that you can see that. You can pause the video and see that. So once you've gone through all my other LD case writing videos, you can kind of use this to make sure that you've done it correctly. And if your case kind of follows this general outline, then you're in very good shape, and probably means you have a pretty good case. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. And if you have ideas or suggestions for other videos that I should make, please leave them down there as well. But thanks so much, and I'll see you guys in the next video.